Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host, Yeukai Ketchadori.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another very special episode. And today with me is Doug C. Brown, who is a master when it comes to sales. Now, Doug has an incredible story to tell because he was born into a family business, a business that was doing business, and he started doing business at a very, very young age. And since then, he has built over 35 companies. In fact, helped other companies to generate millions of dollars. In fact, I love Doug's story of how he has successfully trained his two girls to generate thousands of dollars before they graduate from college. Isn't that amazing? I think it's incredible. Doug, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today.
Oh, thanks, Yeukai. That's appreciated. I'm very grateful to be here.
Amazing. You have an amazing story, and you have done quite a lot of things. I've just mentioned just a little bit of that. Would you be okay to tell us your journey to where you are right now and why you are doing what you're doing?
Okay, so the journey, it's when I look back on it, I go, wow, that went fast, right? I get to this age and I'm like, wow, geez, things went so fast. But I started working at the age of 3 for my dad, and he had a family business. He was repaired electric motors and machinery and equipment, and I would sweep floors for 25 cents a week. And I started learning the business that way. It was kind of like start there. By the time we were maybe 5.5 to 6, all my brothers, we started interfacing with clients. And I still don't know today. I wish I had the chance to ask him, but I still don't know today whether or not it was by design or he just needed extra labor and it was low cost, right? But we started taking orders and talking about things with clients and really beginning to understand how to communicate.
Yes.
And I worked for my dad's business from the age of 3 till the age of almost 19. And then I went into the military. In between all of that, I was always constantly trying to start something on my own, right? So I would take a business and I wouldn't know how to put it up together, like a lot of people would just start with an idea. And then I'd monetize it. And I had a lot of small multi-5-figure businesses when I was in high school. And then I got to my first 6-figure and multi-6-figure business after high school. But, I was a guy who never had a challenge with money because I was constantly working and I was learning in my dad's business what to do and what not to do as I was growing. And once I got out of the military, then I figured, well, I should probably take this education thing more seriously. So I went back and got some university degrees and entered into the workforce. And I had a degree in business, I had a degree in biology, and I had a degree in nuclear medicine. And when I got into the real world of business in the nuclear medicine field, I started realizing, man, it was hard to firstly get a job. But then when I got one, I was selling music equipment all the way through university, through college. Right. And I was selling music equipment to very large bands and DJs and things like that. And I worked with like Aerosmith and Boston and the Eagles and Billy Joel's band and a lot of bands like that. But I realized, hey, I'm making 3 times more selling music equipment than I was getting 2 college degrees to go into a specialty in nuclear medicine. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I said, I think I'll try this thing out in sales full time at this point. So I went and got a job working for a corporation, and I became the number 1 sales rep out of 315 in my first year. And I had a couple other side businesses, so I was really making a lot of money back then for myself, and I ended getting married and having kids, and it just kept growing from there. So I've just constantly been building businesses, and I've been on my own for well over 20 years at this point. And it seemed to all work out, but it all stems back from, starting with my dad at age 3, learning parts of what to do and not to do.
Yes, yeah. And you went on to represent one of the biggest companies as the top selling sales rep for a $2 billion company.
Yeah, that was the one that I started out with 315 reps. And I ended up catching the CEO and the shareholders' eye, because I was literally outselling 3-4 teams most months. So teams had 9 people in them, and my sales were exceeding, sometimes 36 people combined sales. And so they were like, "What is this kid doing while I'm there?" And all I did was apply what I learned through life, through my dad's business, and really, it wasn't. I didn't think it was anything special, because it was just something that we always did in business, right? You have to sell, you have to make money. It's just, if you don't do that, you can't pay the bills, you can't feed people, you can't take vacations, all of that stuff. So I thought this was just commonplace knowledge when I got there. Yeah. But evidently I had a style that actually worked and did quite well.
Yes, yeah. And one of the things I admire about you, Doug, is how you then went on to associate yourself with some of the greatest trainers, personal development in our time, like you worked with Tony Robbins' company, and
yes.
One of my all-time favorite, Chet Holmes, and that all made you a better person.
It did. There were a lot of challenges when you're working with people who have very high profiles. But no, I did. And that came out of that corporate job that I actually worked, because after the corporate job, I decided, what, I'm going to start my own consulting and auditing company in the same space I was working, which was telecommunications. Yes. That led me on to meet a person who had a very large coaching company called Coach University. And I was also helping a gentleman, his name is J. Conrad Levinson. He wrote a series of books called Guerrilla Marketing. And so while I was helping Coach University on the telecommunications, they said to me, you should be a coach. And I said, well, I used to play some semi-professional football, and they laughed just like you did. And they're like, no, not that type of coach. I'm like, what other type of coaches are there? I didn't know. I was a sports coach is all I knew. So they went on to explain to me what a personal coach was, a business coach was. And I said, well, I could probably do that. So I started doing that. Then Jay was one of my clients. I was helping them out. And Jay introduced me to Chet Holmes and said, you really need to meet this guy, Chet Holmes. And so I took Chet's concepts and I applied them to my consulting and auditing business. And I drove that up to 7 figures over the next 15 months, from startup to 7 figures. And I was like, wow, this stuff really works. Okay, great. So I approached them and said, hey, listen, I'm a coach. I'm a business owner. Could I at least give it a shot and see if I could be a coach for you? And that's what I did. And in the first 4 months, I was the highest grossing coach they ever had. Wow. And so that caught Chet's attention, because Chet loved growth. And so, then they were trying to figure out just like in the corporate thing. All I was doing, Yeukai, was taking the same concepts that I have been applying in the corporate field and applied them to coaching and consulting, which is, you're not in the business that people think you're in. In other words, if you're a coach or consultant, you are not in the coaching business. You are not in the consulting business. You serve that function, but your real main business is acquiring clients so that you can actually coach or consult with them or for them. Yeah. And I just applied that principle to that. And I did have some business experience, so that helped out when I was dealing with businesses. But the reality is that's how I got to be the number one. In my first 4 months, I was grossing $65,000 a month in coaching sales. So, and I don't say that to be braggadocious or anything. That's what the numbers were. And that's why I caught everybody's attention. So what ended up happening from there is Chet approached me and said, geez, would you train our coaches? Go see the head of coaching and, do that. And I did. And their average sale went from $1,500 a month to $2,500 a month, but their conversion went from 20% to 25%. So they started seeing incremental increases in that. Then they approached me again. Chet approached me again, and he said, listen, I'd like you to take over the sales division and the training division. And I'm like, okay. So I did. And then when I got there, I started realizing, okay, I can apply all these things I learned in business to Chet's business. And so I did. So I looked at metrics and I started measuring things, and I found, where salespeople were dropping the ball and what part of the stage of metrics, and trained all the trainers. And they asked me to be a presenter. So I did that and I became the number one presenter for the same reason. I knew it was about acquiring clients.
Yes.
And so that kind of caught everybody's attention. So I ended up becoming his president of training and sales.
Wow.
I was still an independent, getting paid independent and commission only. But then a man named Tony Robbins came along and he wanted in. And we were like, okay, Tony Robbins, come on in, right? So I ended up becoming Tony's president of training and sales. And I did that whole stint for about 7 years. And the cool part was, they had some underperforming assets. And when you look at your business as client acquisition, you start looking at things and say, okay, how do we do more of this? And I was able to increase their close rates on their teams by as high as 862%. And I was able to up their product sales by over 100%, all within a short 6-month period. So that caught their attention. And then so what ended up happening is I went from one thing to another. Then I started getting calls, right, from these big training companies. Hey, what are you doing? You want to help us? And I'm like, okay. So, because you were asking, why am I doing what I'm doing today? This is how the journey looked.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today is because I was getting all these calls and people were starting to pay me nice 6-figure checks. So I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. And I get to help people in the process. And that's kind of what happened. And I just, kept my consulting and my coaching business in play, and then started entering into other avenues like software and different businesses as I went along.
Yes. And now you're helping companies that gross over $5 million in sales expand and optimize. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I kind of specialize in. But what I realized is, because I worked with so many large companies, like, big ones like Procter & Gamble and Intuit and companies like that, everything I was teaching them and doing in their businesses, which was successful for them, I was able to apply to the mid-size market. And that's why I stayed in the 5 million and up companies.
Right.
What I realize now is everything that I do in the mid-size market, because the mid-size market couldn't afford what, Intuit could afford, right? But the mid-size market could afford enough that I was comfortable with our arrangement. But I realized, hey, you know what? Everything I'm doing can be put more into a system. And I can bring this into the smaller size businesses as well, but I can do this in a group format. So in 2021, this year, we decided to start a training institute on sales revenue growth and on conversational sales mastery and everything that I've been teaching people. And that's going to be rolling out in the next few months. And where, people can access literally the same information I taught to Intuit for, one fraction of the cost. And the reason I'm doing that is because the older I get, the more I realize there's only so many pairs of shoes you can wear. And, it's only, I've had the fancy cars. I don't need them anymore. I still drive a nice car, but, I don't need to drive the, $100,000 plus vehicle anymore. Even if I wanted to, which I could afford, but it's not there. I want to help as many people. It's more mission driven for me now that we have all the business principles and I'm not in the, people go through stages, right? They go through, okay, let's get secure, let's survive first and then let's in business and let's get secure, and then let's get better than secure and we're thriving a little bit, where we have way more money now than we need to pay the bills or just a little bit more. And then from the next level, it's like, okay, how do I scale and serve? And I'm in that kind of phase of my life where, I don't care if I do $20 million and I only net $1 million anymore. I don't care because it's like, well, what am I going to do with $1 million? Right. I mean, a lot of people, and I know some people maybe listening to this might say, well, yeah, I wish I had $1 million. But, remember, I started working at 25 cents an hour. So, not an hour, 25 cents a week. Right. That was 25 cents an hour would have been a joy right back then. But it's my point being is we all have to go through incremental. And I know plenty of people that I'd say, hey, I want to make $1 million. I go, hey, I make that a day. So it's like, okay, good power to you, I'll fund my next company that I need 20 million for or whatever. Right. So it's just one of those things that it's a progression. And when you get to a certain place, money doesn't matter like it used to. Of course, money is important. I'll quote Tony, it allows you to arrive at your problems in style.
Indeed.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the journey and the path, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
I love that. I love that. It's great. And, you are a true example of if you apply yourself, keep learning, and associate yourself with the right type of people, you can reach any goal, whatever goal that may be, whatever that you truly want to have. And we appreciate you being here. Let's dive into talking about how to massively prospect the right way. If you're a business owner, well, let's talk specifically to consultants, because the majority of listeners are in the consulting industry.
Yeah, and I have a nice warm place in my heart for consultants and coaches because I've spent such time around them, and I know a lot of the challenges they face, and I faced. I mean, it was nice in the beginning to get $65,000 a month coming in and all that stuff, but the reality is I had to learn how to do that outside an entity as well, and then grow that to 65,000 and then $1 million and so on and so on. So the number one way, again, remember consultants, coaches, the number one thing you're in is you're not in the coaching and consulting business. You're in the client acquisition business to deliver coaching and consulting. And the number one way of doing that is massive prospecting. Too many people in the consulting business, the coaching business, which I will be teaching in my training company. I'm plugging that. So too many people in that business, they're myopically focused on, I got to deliver overwhelming value to the client, which is nice, but they're focused on the operations side of the business and they're neglecting the side of the business that needs far more, frankly, than the operations side of the business. It's, or as equal to, which is you've got to be able to bring clients through the door. What's the number one way? You've got to go outbound. Whether now outbound is you're paying for traffic and having that generated on LinkedIn, Google, or Facebook or whatever, which a lot of coaches will do. Consultants more usually on LinkedIn. And, that's, you're making a payment to go outbound. So there's two types of marketing that people need to be aware of on prospecting. Number one is branding. Branding being, hey, I'm going to, get on a podcast like we're doing right now. And people are going to hear me speak and they're going to kind of identify with my company or identify with me and have a thought about me. So whatever they're thinking about tomorrow, that's my brand that I left, on the podcast. So branding can be that. It could be, writing blogs and articles and, getting into the PR side of business. Like I just got mentioned in Forbes 3 times in the last 8 weeks. And that's, it's kind of gratifying thinking where I came from. But the bottom line is when people see that, they go, whoa, this guy must know what he's talking about. At least most of them. I don't know. Maybe some people go, nah, this guy's crazy. But that's branding. So people will remember who you are over time and they'll have a thought about you. One of the challenges that consultants really have is they focus too much on the branding side of the business. I love what Oprah Winfrey, she's one of my heroes, or heroine, I think it's called in the female context. But the reality is Oprah said this. She said, brand? I didn't even know what a brand was. I just went out there and served people and got people to come in and all that other stuff. And then the brand came later. And a lot of successful people that I've had the opportunity to network with have said the same thing. So branding's one thing, but then direct response. I'm going to do something to get a direct response back. That's the prospecting that consultants should really focus on. You can still do branding, still do all that stuff, but make that like the 80-20 rule, 80% in the direct response, 20% in the branding side of the business, because the branding side of the business will bring you a client every once in a while. Yes. I've done podcasts like this. People have reached out on LinkedIn and said, hey, I love what you said. And, can we talk? Right. So they might turn into a client. That's passively coming in from the branding, but direct response, and I like things even like cold calling, right? So I'll call CEOs and, find out what their pains and frustrations and things are and try to make contacts that way. I will go and send direct mail, I want a response from somebody. And that response could be, go away. That's okay. Right. Or that response might be, hey, I want to have a conversation, or that response might be, hey, that's nice. And I got to continue to keep, playing the direct response game with them. And so your consultants out there, really, if they focus on direct response methodology and short term, in other words, do something that's going to get you a result within the first 30 days.
Yes.
Because so many consultants are trying to do it, and they're putting what I would call, I teach this thing called short, long, right? You got to have 3 shorts to 1 medium or long. And long can be, takes 3 months or more to get the direct response. And the challenge with a lot of people is they're putting all this stuff together. That's all these long things to do. I'm going to start my own podcast. So, well, that's nice, but it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to get that up and running in most cases, or longer, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, focus on the direct response. And then it's all about massive prospecting. And you asked the question, I think it was, did you ask what's the best way or to do massive prospecting? What was the question?
What would be the best way to make it happen?
All right. So the first thing is you got to get very truthful as a coach or consultant. And I mean, not honest, truthful. We can measure this. Honesty is subjective. I'm a beautiful looking person, right? You might feel that, and that objectively might be true for you. Now, people will recognize that, but some people, say I'm an ultra beautiful person, and they're not nice people, right? But they want to pretend they are. So the same thing with people in business. They want to pretend, oh, I want to double my sales. Really? Let's talk about why. And that's where you got to get down to. So if you're doing, I don't know, as a coach or consultant, if you're doing whatever, 50,000 pounds, 150,000, 500,000 pounds, whatever, and you want to literally double your business, is that a truthful goal? Like you're going to do what's needed regardless? Or is it like, oh, that's a nice thing to think about? Because if it's a nice thing to think about, you're being honest. But if you came to me, it's going to be like, okay, let's build a plan. Let's build a prospecting plan off of this. We want to get 200,000 extra pounds or 200,000 extra US dollars, which would be more like 70,000 pounds, right? Now we can build a plan off of that. And so that plan is pretty simple. What are the things that we're going to do in order to go out and get a direct response from the business owners or the, people that we're getting, desire to do business with. And the third thing is, what is the ideal person? If we could only work with 100 people, that's it. We only had a list of 100. If we tried to do 101, we would burst into flames, let's say. Right? We can only do 100 people. What is that ideal client or that ideal persona? Who do you want to work with? And why do you want to work with them? For me, kind of like I want a company at a certain level because I know I'm going to ask a certain amount of money and I want to know that they can afford it without like sweating and worrying about, what's happening next month. I also want to make they're a nice person because we're going to be engaging. Like you're a nice guy, right? Yeah. We could talk and engage like this. I also want to, because if they're not, and you put together your whole list, right? Are they going to make a decision in the time frame that I want them to? Are they able to make? Am I talking to the buyer or am I talking to a decision maker? There's a difference.
There is a difference.
Right? So you put all those criteria down and then you build out a plan. A lot of people call this a marketing plan or a prospecting plan. And then you populate a calendar with the things you're going to do. And you measure those, track those, figure out what's working, adjust, and keep going. Now, the key is you got to have at least 6 new ones that happen in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So every other month, you have to put a new one in play. Or every month, if you're really an overachiever, put one every month. And watch what happens. It happens every single time, sir.
Amazing.
When people do this, all of a sudden their numbers just magically go up. My biggest success rate for a solo consultant coach was he went from $140,000 a year in commissions to $2.1 million in commissions.
That's amazing. Reminds me of one of the guests we had recently who managed to go from zero to $1 million in 7 months, right in the middle of the pandemic. Her name is Kendra. It's amazing. The strategies that she used are similar to what we are talking about here today, which, confirms, that there is a system. And, if you know what works, it absolutely works for you. I want to dive into talking about how to prospect to larger accounts, because I know you've done quite a bit of that. If you are talking to somebody who has a desire to go for large accounts, what are the perhaps 3 things that they need to be looking out for and they need to be doing?
So the first thing that they need to do is understand that large accounts are no different than small accounts when it comes to the people you're going to deal with, right? So a lot of times people will, especially in the coach or consultant world, they'll go, well, I don't know, man, if I go after this big company there, or I go after this person. And I learned this from Chet. Chet told me celebrities were the hardest person for him to ever convert. So the relationship with Tony Robbins took 17 years.
Yes.
Right. So he told me, he's like, getting to CEOs, because he worked like Men's Warehouse and, companies that were all over the television here. He and I even did a stint with Central Broadcasting, CBS TV. And, so getting to people on whatever level is not that hard if they're not a celebrity, evidently. So to remember that small accounts and large accounts are different, but the person you're dealing with is still a person. And so not to fear that if you get rejected, I don't like this statement. A guy who was very successful said to me one time, he was a hunter or something. I don't know. He said, if you shoot for eagles, you'll still bag something to eat, even if you miss the eagle, right? I'm like, I'm not going to shoot an eagle, right? But the bottom line is, and I spent 12 years in the military. So it's, the bottom line is you got to think of it as it's the same. So reduce the fear, because that's what happens for most people. They think, well, I'm not worthy. I'm not used to this or whatever. Trust me, it's not much different. Yeah. Once you get there, you must identify who the buyer is. Do not be talking to people who are not the buyers. You're wasting your time, right? So if you're going after, let's say it's a company and they're a B2B consultant and they want to go to a $50 million company. Traditionally, the owner is there.
Yes.
And traditionally, the owner is the buyer, right? Or the CEO. Do not waste your time in a lower ranked level, because trying to be pushed up the hill is harder than the CEO trying to push you down the hill, saying, you know what, I'm not the right person to talk to, but my president of whatever is the person, or talk to my chief financial officer, and then you can play the game of connecting both of them. So that's the third thing. Now, depending on the size of the sale, here's the thing that people don't really know.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of the sale, if you're going after big sales, what people would call whale sales, right?
Yes.
Huge ones.
They go after whales.
It is a peer-to-peer buying relationship. So what does that mean? That means, let's take it in the context of a business, because I can explain it probably better that way. If I'm going to go into a big company and I want to sell them something that's big, and they're going to bring into the meeting their CEO, chief financial officer, vice president of sales, human resources, and IT. Let's say they bring that in, because that's not unusual that in large sales, they have a multi-person group that comes in. You better bring people in who are also a CEO, a CFO, human resources, IT, and vice president of sales. You have to match up, because the reality is that when we're trying to sell one on many like that, although it does work, it's a lot easier when the IT person says something about IT and they can be answered by a peer.
That's right.
Right? Now, people always ask me, well, how do I do that? I don't have that in my company. You can ask people and you can hire people. You can hire them to come in for the meetings. But the reality is that a lot of people will do this to help you out, and they love when they're getting paid. But we must in larger sales have that ability to have the peer-to-peer thing going on. Now, if your sale is, hey, listen, I want to close a 5,000 or 10,000, pound account per month, you don't necessarily have to have that peer-to-peer. But if your deal is in consulting, you want to get $250,000 up consulting packages, you're not going to do it alone. In most cases. So it's nice to have other resources. And if you're certainly going after a $500,000 or a $1 million deal, you better have a team that can help you.
Absolutely. And it's always better in a company of great individuals or advisors, people you can rely on, which is amazing. Doug, we're coming toward the end of our time together, and there is so much we can talk about. I wanted to talk about raising your price per client is another topic to talk about. But before we do that, where can people find you to maybe access the training that you are releasing out very soon?
Yeah, they can go to my LinkedIn profile. It's Doug Brown 1234 numbers. I tried to make it easy. If that doesn't come up, I also went to Berklee College of Music for a small period of time, but that always comes up. Doug C. Brown, Berklee College of Music. You can go to businesssuccessfactors.com. You can send me an email at doug@businesssuccessfactors.com. You can call me directly at our company number. The area code is 603 here in the United States, 595-0303. And another place you could go to winwinsellingbook.com, and that'll redirect you to the latest book that I wrote, and you'll be able to contact me that way as well.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. We will also put these links below this recording so you can access it at any time. Doug, very quickly, how do you raise your price? What sort of things do you consider before putting a particular price down?
So the answer is, how do you raise your price? And the first answer would be very carefully, right? So, but don't be afraid to raise our prices. That's the thing. And so we ask, there's always a tolerance level. I think in real estate, correct me wrong, folks who are listening in real estate, but I think it's like you can't go up more than 7% on rents. Because if you do, people are going to leave. So when you firstly ask yourself this question, when's the last time you had a price increase? Right? Because, lots of companies have price increases. So it's not unethical to raise your prices, especially if your expenses have gone up. So you want to look at the industry, figure out what the tolerance level is. And then as much as that, you also want to, and I think this supersedes the industry, what kind of value exchange are you supplying for your particular client?
Right.
If they are, let's say you go in and you make them $5 million or pounds, what is a fair compensation for that for yourself as a coach or consultant? Because it's not, hey, I got $2,000 a month, right? They got out of it for $24,000 and they made $5 million. Good for them, not so good for you. So you want to look at the exchange or value of what you bring, and then ask a percentage which you think is fair. And you never underestimate yourself in these type of things, because I've literally gone into some arrangements where they paid me a base rate and they've literally given me 50% of the upside for 2 years. So it can definitely happen. It's not unusual that it can happen. But you want to look at and say, okay, what's fair? What's a fair exchange? And then raise your rates, but raise them a little bit slowly. Don't go from 2,000 to 25,000 and expect that everybody's going to go, oh, geez, that's great. Come on in. So, even in a restaurant, when I work with restaurants, it's like, the wonderful thing is if somebody pays, say, $15 for, I don't know, a vegetarian dish or whatever, if they raise that to $15.50, let's say, it's not going to throw people off. They're still going to buy it, right? But what are they making? They're making 50 cents in profit on every single meal. So if they do 1,000 of those in a year, it starts adding up.
Indeed.
Right? And so that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people, there's psychology around raising prices. One can look up the information on that. But I would look at what's going on in the market, see if you're underpriced in the market, number one. Number two, which supersedes number one, understand the value proposition that you're providing.
Awesome.
And, don't be afraid of it. Make sure you're talking with a buyer. And then, as simple as this sounds, most people don't do this. Ask. Just ask.
If you don't ask, you don't get. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful to hear from you, and you are generous with your knowledge. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I hope this impacts somebody today, and they can, have a better tomorrow or a better today because of it.
Amazing. There you have it, guys. If you want to know more about this subject we're talking about, or you just want to access the training that Doug has put together, just go to one of the links below and you will get there. As we always say, this life is better when you do it with somebody who has walked the path before. So if you want to know how to do it, you know where to go. And once again, I want to invite you to our clubhouse. We are meeting there Monday to Friday at 9 o'clock UK time. That's GMT time on Clubhouse. And we would love for you to join us there. We have just started, so we are in the growth phase. It's exciting times. So if you've got any questions, reach out to us or reach out to Doug, and we'll be delighted to help you there. Doug, once again, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Have a great day, dear. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.